So hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name is Katie and today I'm going to be sharing with you some kind of old school YA fantasy recommendations. Today I wanted to share some kind of book recommendations based on a kind of, it's not quite a genre, but a kind of vibe you get from books, which kind of some more older like backlist YA fantasy titles. So I mean the kind of 2012 to 2014 fantasy is quite a distinctive you can tell when you're reading a book like that it's from that kind of era, but there are actually some really good hidden gems. I feel kind of like very nostalgic and like very kind of classic-y fantasy, just a bit more kind of like more epic fantasy, I would say. Yeah, so let's just get into the recommendations. So the first one is going to be the Graceling trilogy by Christine Kershaw, so I'll put a picture in because most of these I actually have on my Kindle because they're quite cheap because they're older books. This one follows, the first one follows Katza, who is, she's graced, so in this world you have people with powers, they're called graces, but graced with the power of killing based on touch. So she is kind of working for Uncle as an assassin, but then she sort of gets embroiled in a bit of a political, she goes and kind of rescues this prisoner and then gets involved in this big political conspiracy. So yeah, so this one's really good, and I love the next book as well in the trilogy, which is Fire, which is kind of a companion book. That one follows Fire. She's this thing called a monster, kind of has like siren-like powers, so she can like persuade people to do things. She has really bright hair. I can't quite remember the relevance of that, but I think it is relevant. But yeah, so that one's great as well, and it's just kind of exploring that these characters are just kind of exploring themselves, and they're all quite like strong, independent women, and yeah, they're very feminist books as well. They're really ahead of their time as well. They're quite progressive, especially considering like I think Graceling was written in 2008, so that's quite impressive. And yeah, I just really like the writing style. It's very easy to get into. They're quite character-driven books as well, which I really enjoy. Next, I'm going to recommend the Finnikin of the Rock series. So these are the Lumatiere Chronicles. So Finnikin of the Rock I kind of enjoyed when I read it, but I wasn't like super loving it. But I'm so glad I carried on with the series because the second two, Furies of Exiles and Quintana of Charin, that's really hard to say, are amazing. Like I think I gave them like 4.5 stars. So yeah, I would definitely say if you felt a bit meh about Finnikin of the Rock, definitely continue because the series gets so much better. So this one follows well, the first one follows Finnikin been like exiled from his country because there was this big event like that happened many years ago, and he's just kind of going around trying to recruit people to take the kingdom back basically. So it follows that, and this series is also quite character driven. It's also that kind of, I think a lot of these books have a kind of like mountainy vibe, which I mean I love. That's probably, yeah, actually that's is kind of a theme. That's obviously one of my fictional likes. I think it kind of explores the kind of like connections and relationships people have with each other, all the different kinds, so like sibling or like romantic or friendship, lots of different friendship dynamics as well, which I really liked in this series as well. And there's also some really kind of interesting female characters as well. Quintana, who is in the books 2 and 3, she's so interesting. She's kind of a bit crazy, but she's also she kind of knows what she wants, and yeah, she's a very interesting character. So then next is the Girl of Fire and Thorns trilogy, and also there is another like companion book coming out in April which is quite exciting. I'll be reading that. But this one follows Elisa, who is a princess, and she gets sent away from her kingdom to marry a king, and yeah, it's just basically her navigating that and also it has some really good, so she kind of has binge eating disorder, which was really nice to see in a YA fantasy book especially, like because you don't really see eating disorders very much in books in general, to be honest. But yes, that was really nice to see that, and sort of her journey to self-confidence. So this book is I think this trilogy in general is a really good take on the chosen one trope as well. And also book 2 and 3 had the best romance. Like it's so good. I was obsessed with it. It's like so angsty and it's just so yeah, so I'd highly recommend that one. And also there's the Gale of Fire and Thorns read along going on. So I think they're on the 3rd book at the moment, so I'll put a link to that in the description. It's kind of what inspired me to read them, so I'm really glad. So I'm really glad that that was going on. So yeah, so then next I have the 7 Realms by Cindy Williams-Chimer. So yeah, I love this series. I don't see it talked about that much on BookTube, but it's kind of like a classic YA fantasy. So we follow Han and Razia, who Han is like a kind of street lord, and he one day finds an amulet used to belong to the Demon King who lived many years ago, and he kind of gets involved in a bit of a mess with the wizards and yeah, the amulet, because they're kind of hunting him down for it. And then we also follow Razia, who is the princess, and she's just kind of navigating like court life basically. And yeah, we follow them. They're kind of quite separate in the 1st book, but their storylines do kind of converge a little bit. And yeah, so it's a really great series, and I love the world so much because the spin-off as well, which is that following like the descendants of that 1st series. The world is so great. It's kind of like a mountainy environment. It's like the fells. It's kind of, there's like wizards, and there's also the kind of clan warriors, and in the spin-off as well there's dragons, which is good. And there's kind of, yeah, there's quite a bit of stuff to do with wolves as well, because it's a queendom, so the line of like princesses, they're called the Grey Wolf line. So yeah, so that's cool as well. Yeah, so I'd highly recommend that series. The characters are all great as well. Next series is the Furies of Calderon by Jim Butcher. So I have this one. This is kind of old. There was a used book, but so this is the 1st one, and I have the rest on audiobook, so I'd highly recommend the audiobooks for this series. Actually, they're fantastic. But this one follows Tavi, who is like a shepherd boy in this valley, the Calderon Valley. He doesn't have powers, so most people in this world have powers. They have furies, so they're kind of like Pokemon. So like elemental like furies that they combined, and they give them like powers, and they can like summon the fury. But Tavi doesn't have any powers, so he's kind of learning to manage without them. And this spy for the kingdom, so it's kind of an ancient Rome type setting. But yeah, this spy for the kingdom called Amara comes to the valley, and basically gets them all embroiled in a big conspiracy. And then towards the end of the book, it's sort of, and there's kind of a big war. It's basically a classic fantasy storyline. But so yeah, this one's really good. And also throughout the series, watching Tavi grow is you're so proud of him by the end. And his love interest Kutai as well is so great. She's such a great character. I just love characters called Kutai, because there's Kutai from the Poppy War as well. It's a really good series, and I think this is a great series to start with as well if you've not read much like kind of high fantasy, adult fantasy before. I'm not quite sure whether this one's YA or not. I've seen it either or, but this is a great kind of crossover series, and I think it would be a really good place to start if you were wanting to get into more fantasy. So I would highly recommend that one. And then next is going to be The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. And what's the name of this series? The Remnant Chronicles. So the first one we follow Leah, who is a princess, and she's meant to be getting married, but she kind of runs away because she doesn't want to get married. And so she goes to this little village, and then the prince, who she's meant to be marrying, and also an assassin who's coming to kill her, are also there. They follow her. But the first book is written in a way where you don't know which one's the prince and which one's the assassin, which is really cool. I thought it was so fun trying to guess. I think I actually did manage to guess right, which I was proud of myself for. The first one just kind of follows them in that kind of village setting, and then the next 2 books, they kind of really expand on the world. And Leah, the main character, she grows so much. She becomes such a great character. She's just so kind of like strong and kind of self-sacrificing, which is like, she puts the needs of her like kingdom and stuff before herself. She makes some quite hard decisions, which I think was really good to see. And also there is a love triangle in this book, which I'm not the biggest fan of love triangles, but I actually thought it was done really well in this series. Because, well, so usually in love triangles there's like 2 characters that you can clearly see are going to end up together, and then the third character is just kind of there to be another love interest basically. But this one, it's not the case. Like the kind of third wheel. He has his own storyline, and if he wasn't a love interest for the character, I think he'd still be a very relevant and important character. So yeah, so I really like that. And also I really love the spin-off, the Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves. They're really good as well, but they're kind of newer, so I didn't feel like I could include them on this list. So yeah, and then finally I'm going to talk about the Winner's Curse trilogy by Marie Rutowski, the pinnacle of angsty YA 2012 romance. So this one follows Kestrel, who is kind of the daughter of the kind of general, and one day she goes to a slave auction and she buys this slave who takes him home, and then they kind of end up falling in love a bit. So and then the series kind of takes off from there. Yeah, it's really good. The politics are really good, and I think in the later 2 books it really expands on it really well, the kind of world. And I just read the kind of spin-off companion book called The Midnight Lie, which I really enjoyed. I'm not sure it's like for everyone, but I really enjoyed it. I think it's kind of like it sort of reminded me of an N.K. Jemisin book a bit. It's just kind of the like gods, and anyway, the first series is really good. And yeah, the romance is really good. Yeah, I love how kind of Kestrel as the main character, she's quite like cunning, and she's a bit of a Slytherin. She's not super like good at fighting. She just kind of uses her wits and her like political savviness to get out of situations, which I thought it was really good. And especially for that kind of era, it was nice to see in a fantasy protagonist. So yeah, so that is that one. So that is everything. So thank you so much for watching, and please give this video a like if you enjoyed, and let me know if you read any of these books or if you're interested in any of these books. I would love to chat about it in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed, then consider subscribing. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. And yeah, they're quite correct character